Hey, what's up, fellas? Doing a video for Bliar over at Technical Survey Services, who has requested a liquid-powered handheld torch. Propane's getting a little expensive these days, so I have provided them with this universal fuel torch that can burn pretty much just about any fuel. However, they requested diesel fuel, and this is going to allow them to just drop a hose directly into a diesel tank and run right off of that. So this is the micro rocket torch. This thing does run off an air compressor, making it about 400 degrees hotter than a conventional torch. And when you're running propane, it's also about 400 to 500 degrees hotter than a propane flame. So, the first thing you have to do for the ignition procedure is to prime the pump. So we're going to open the valve on the gun here a little bit. And we have to close the bypass valve on the pump here, which is the side towards the intake. So we're now just going to plug the pump in. We're going to make sure this is facing into a jar here. Okay. Pretty sure. Okay, that's primed. See, we got a little fuel spray there. We are now going to close the valve on this gun. And we are going to open the bypass valve here. About pretty much all the way open. And we are showing 10 psi's with the bypass valve all the way open. We should be able to go ahead and crack this open now. We're going to start with a little bit of a drizzle like that. Very small amount of fuel coming out. We're going to bring the pressure up to about 15 psi's. Now that we have the gun primed, we're going to start off with a very small amount of air here, where it just makes a small hiss. Now I'm going to start the fuel. Not quite enough fuel there. We still got some bubbles in the fuel line, so we may suffer a flame out here during the ignition procedure. You want to pull up. You don't want to jack around when it's getting hot. So basically, to increase the fuel pressure, you simply close the bypass valve. When you open the bypass valve, which is the valve on the intake side of the pump, the fluid from the discharge is directed right back into the intake. So when you close that valve, all the fluid is forced out the discharge. So you're going to get maximum pressure that way. So if the valve's all the way open, you're at the lowest pressure setting. If it's all the way closed, you're at the maximum pressure setting. So we're going to be running this thing at about 15 to 20 psi's on the fuel pressure for a good stable flame. You want to sit there and baby it a minute until you get all the air bubbles out of the line. I definitely recommend keeping the blowtorch right there with you. As I said, this thing can run on propane and other fuels. Propane's going to be the hottest for sure. I think the maximum you can get is about 2,500 degrees. You can melt cast iron, but you can't melt steel with this thing. So the air compressor is a required constituent to give you this hot of a flame. Otherwise, it would just be like a regular or spud burner type propane torch. Other than that, the lighting procedure is pretty simple. Just drop the hose into a tank there, and you don't even really need to toggle the flow valve that's on the pump with this particular setup. The needle valve on the burner itself right there works just as good, so it's easier to run that. So I've been just leaving that valve on the pump cracked about halfway. The discharge valve, that is. Now, as far as flame settings go, this thing has many flame settings. Just having it on does not mean that it's on high. And because it's such a powerful torch, it's kind of deceiving. The first time you use it, you're going to think you have it on high, but it may not be. And the way I like to describe it is this thing can go from a jet engine kind of sound to a rocket engine. Like when you think you've got it on high, you suddenly find out by adjusting it that it has 50% more power to offer just yet. You got to be kind of careful and learn this thing first before you go jacking around with it in a confined space. I definitely recommend that you work in a completely ventilated area, because if you're not used to it, you can cause a flame out. It is very stable. You can shake it around pretty vigorously and all that without it going out. But getting it at the optimum setting also just happens to be at the top end of where it will flame itself out. So the highest setting possible is at that point just before it flames out on you. And over time of using this thing, you'll learn that point. It also can make a very big, long flame that's not a high velocity flame. It can act like, it can put like a 4-foot flame out if you want. So it does have other settings. This is just a high velocity mode used to get metal hot very fast. Very small areas, that is.